Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival 2021 Q&A. I'm Kathy Green, founder of Caribbean movie company Storyplay TV. Thank you so much for joining us. This year, our full program is going to be screened until tonight, and you can feel free to comment and ask any questions you have for our filmmaker, Nick Brandestini, maker of SAPELO, and we'll be sure to answer them during this session. Of course, don't forget that you can check out all the films, including Nick's film SAPELO, at ttfilmfestival.com. We would like to give a hearty and sincere thanks to our ttff 21 sponsors and partners. NGC is our signature sponsor this year, and we have leading sponsorship from Shell, Trinidad and Tobago, and Republic Bank Limited. We have contributing sponsorship from NLCB and supporting sponsorship from Sport and Culture Fund, respectively. Today I have with me Nick Brandestini, maker of SAPELO, a feature documentary. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you for having me, Kathy. It's a pleasure being here.
Congratulations on having your feature in TTFF 21.
Thank you.
We're very pleased to have you. And so your film looks at the Geechee culture and observes a family on SAPELO Island, which is in Georgia, US, correct?
That is correct. Yes, indeed.
So I'm going to get to one of the core themes of your film, which is race and cultural heritage. In your film, we hear the matriarch of the Geechee family speak about the fact that, she's a little bit wary of people who aren't from her culture, and specifically white people. How did you get her trust to make this film?
What a good question. I mean, regardless of who people are that I would like to make a documentary about, I'm always just very aware of that to them, I'm a total outsider, and that they're hesitant to open themselves up to people that they don't know. So what I do is I just spend a lot of time with the people that I would like to portray, and don't do any filming. I just explain to them, what I would like to do and who I am, my background. And for some reason, they find it interesting that somebody from Switzerland, which is where I'm from, would be interested in visiting a place like SAPELO Island. So I think that was already some kind of a bonus, because they realized that I'm really interested in learning more about their history and their way of life. And so I just feel, if they're totally against it, and I could feel early on, I got along with Cornelia right away. Mm-hmm. So that helped.
Yeah.
So because I got her blessing, then she, must have told other people that this guy, he's all right. You can, speak with him. And so it wasn't very difficult, but I was always going to be patient and not do any filming on the first 2 visits. I was just there talking with her, and I did have the camera with me, but I didn't, bring it out yet. I didn't show it. And then only on the second visit, I started to do some landscape filming. And she would, speaking of black and white, she would joke to me and say, "Oh, you're not white, you're Swiss," which was a joke to me, but I found it very funny and interesting. So I was just an outsider like any other. Like we talked about before the call, I was a Kamya, and I was aware of that from the beginning. So I kept that in mind the whole time, that I'm an outsider, looking in, and I was just very conscious and careful with that in mind.
Got it. So I want anybody in the audience who's interested in making documentaries to take some notes. We can learn from Nick's practice, which is to make sure not to film it first, and to establish a relationship with the people that he is telling stories about. So this film is definitely intergenerational. We start off with Cornelia, and then we look at her grandsons, right? Who speak very often about sort of the ideas that they have in their head about their responsibility of continuing Geechee culture, right? So we end the film very much focused on some of the disruption that is happening in the youngest of the family's lives, the grandson. Can you talk to me about what led to the decision for that to be the focus of the film towards the end? Specifically, how their lives were disrupted because of having to move from different homes. And then one of the grandsons was in juvenile detention. Those are the disruptions that I'm specifically speaking about. Why did we end the film on those?
I mean, when I go in and I went into this project, I didn't know, of course, at all what it would be about, because I was just open to whatever would happen in real life. And I wanted to have Cornelia and her family basically guide the story. So I didn't expect any of this. My idea was just to make like a 2 to 3 year, project, a long-term project. And I just followed what was happening in real life. And so, for example, when the brothers were not on the island, for me, first, it was like a bit of a shock because I wanted to make a film about the island and didn't think about going anywhere outside. But then, of course, I realized this is just real life and I would like to, be truthful. And so this is just what happened in real life. And that's what I wanted to focus on, which was just reality. So it was not a decision at the beginning. I didn't even know when I first went there. I read about Cornelia. I didn't know her before that, but I researched that she wrote a book. And of course, once I knew that, I wanted to have, her tell me some of the stories in the book. And so I just learned more and more through just being there. And that's how it all came together. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure, but
no, it absolutely does. It absolutely does.
Okay.
If I understand you correctly, you went in trying to discover what was the truth of this family, and in the process, these disruptions happened. One of the boys left the island. You followed him. One of the boys ended up in juvenile detention, and you told the story of what happened and how their lives were disrupted.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. And so how many years did you spend with the family?
Well, I wasn't there the whole time. I would say all in all, it started in late 2016. So it's been a while, but I wasn't there in one time. I was there almost 10 times, but over the course of every few months, I would go back, from Switzerland where I'm based. I would go back, let's say I would be there in May for 2 weeks and then come back in August. And I would always, of course, call and announce or ask if I could come back because I rented a place that they had for me there. And I just felt, okay, now it's about time to come back. And I would just, call them and say, can I come back? And they said, yes, sure, you can. And so it was like 10 more days. And then it's just over the course of 2 years, this is how this happened, or 2.5.
Okay. In your opinion, what are the biggest threats to the preservation of Vichy culture from what you observed? I know that you're not necessarily an expert, but you are somebody who spends a lot of time documenting it.
That's good. Exactly. I always feel uncomfortable speaking for the community because I am not an expert, like you pointed out. But from what I saw myself, and this is addressed in the film too, is outsiders coming in and building like vacation homes, which is of course changing the whole character or soul or whatever you want to call it of the place. And that is, I would think, the biggest threat. Plus also there is maybe not, although it is changing a bit, I'll get to that in a second, but there's not that much jobs or things to do on the island. So everybody has to go on the mainland already. So it's a bit, I mean, you couldn't just stay on the island and live without any contact with the outside world. And this is, like I said, it is a bit changing because there's a cool project going on, an agricultural project that Cornelia started. And this is in the film, and this has taken off with the help of one of her sons, Maurice Bailey. and they're building, this is like a big project, and we link to it on our website, and I'm very happy that this is growing. And they do all kinds of like different foods they produce and sell to restaurants. So there's some good activity. But it is still changing the island, and people are sometimes, you know, moving away, and others are coming in. So it's being gentrified, you know, like so many other places. This is happening also on SAPELO Island.
Understood. Tell us your website. Tell everyone who's listening your website so that they can follow up on that project.
Yes, it's sapelofilm.com. And also, yes, and then also there's a Facebook page which we link to from the website. So it's SAPELO Film also on, if you type that into Facebook, you'll find our Facebook page, SAPELO Film.
Fantastic, fantastic. So Cornelia did unfortunately pass during the making of this documentary. Yes.
Yes.
That seems like it would be a particularly tough time to be working with your documentary subjects, the young boys. Can you talk to me about what special steps you took as a documentary maker to take care with the young people's emotions during that time that you were filming?
That was, of course, very difficult. Just forget about the film, just on a personal level, because it was. I didn't know at the time that how sick she was, so because she didn't talk about it that often or that much, and so I mean it affected even somebody like me who is totally, you know, from far away. I cannot imagine how hard this must have been for the family, and of course I was very aware of that and realized that they were totally and negatively affected. So I didn't know how to. I wanted this to be part of the film because it is very important to the community and to the lives of everybody there. But I was very wary that I didn't want to bother them in this difficult time. So I just tried to keep this at a minimum, to just make it so that people who watch the film can sympathize and empathize with what they're going through, but without being too pushy or disruptive or anything. So this is always what I mentioned before. I always try to be very careful with this, but it's touchy. I mean, it's very, very difficult to deal with these things for them mainly, and you know. Well.
Imagine. So, what just came to mind about the film was a sequence in which you had a voiceover narrator telling us a story about a near-death experience of a young child, and you bring into the film a lot of the sort of spiritual and even superstitious, maybe that's a word that some people might use, beliefs of the Geechee culture. Can you talk to us about why you decided to integrate that aspect of the culture into the film through that narrative, through that invisible voice that narrates that story?
Yes, I mean the stories that are in the film. There's 5 narration passages, and these are all based on the stories that Cornelia would tell to not only me but to everybody who would listen. No, but to everybody who was interested. It was just her life growing up, and these were just the main stories. Because she would be in the middle of the town, and there would be people around her listening to what she was saying. I didn't film that. I was just listening to her stories while she was telling them to me, and I wanted to include this. I mean, she was a spiritual person, but she was also skeptical. And I hope this comes across in the narration. It's not like she believes all of these stories, because she's always questioning those. So it's not like I'm pretending that she's a totally 100% spiritual and superstitious person. Yes, to a point, because that's her, you know, upbringing and background, but she was always questioning things. Also, traditional religion. She maybe remember one of the stories about when she was baptized. So I hope that this is in her. I mean, she saw the texts and she approved of the stories, because it was like, it still had to be shortened and narrowed down to a narration form. But those were her stories that she would tell everybody.
Yeah, it definitely, her skepticism definitely comes across. I think you did an excellent job of making sure that it was balanced.
Oh, thank you so much.
Because I think that's one of the parts that I enjoyed the most. That in the storytelling, you could hear that she was a little bit like, what do these elders believe in? I'm not sure that I believe in it too. But let's just go along with it for now and let me see what my experience is and how I can, find truth in the things that the elders are teaching me, because there is truth to find, right? In her
That's
opinion.
correct. Yes.
Things like that. Okay, fantastic. So before I let you go, because we're almost out of time, I have to dig in to the part of the documentary that made me most emotional, which we sort of touched on before, but that was when the young people, the grandsons, can you remind me of their names? The two youngest boys in the documentary. Marcus and Jonathan. Yes, Marcus and Jonathan. And they got separated, and DeMarcus, I believe it was, who got in trouble with the law. Would you say that that law enforcement and that law enforcement and perhaps behaviors that are deemed criminal are also a threat to Beachy Island culture?
The law enforcement, you say?
Law enforcement and activities that are deemed criminal. Do you think that the way that law enforcement responds, or maybe not law enforcement, but criminal activity, to not place the blame either on law enforcement or the supposed criminals? What I'm trying to ask is, crime and punishment as a theme, is that also a threat to Beachy culture?
I don't think so. I mean, not in general. Would never generalize this. I mean, this is just what happened in this particular case, but it's not. I mean, they're basically, and this is one of the people says it in the film. They basically take care of themselves. There's no active police force on the island. It's like they're governing. Everybody's take care of themselves. And that there's no interaction, at least during the time I was there was no police interaction. So this is a topic that never actually came up. But again, this would be somebody else from there might have totally different experience, but I didn't notice this as an issue at all.
And finally, we know that Geechee culture is a legacy of West African culture. Did you notice any specific, because we don't really touch on specific West African cultural retentions in the film, but I was curious, did you notice or speak about with Cornelia any cultural practices that were specifically traced back to West Africa?
This is a fantastic question. And I mean, there were some interesting historical people, like there was a guy called Bilali who was had an important role, and he was a Muslim, like I don't know exactly, a preacher, but not a preacher, but an important religious figure. And there was a lot of things that I know that I could have gone into, but it wasn't so visible during the everyday life. It was more in the past. So there was, I mean, the way of planting different things were very traditional, but there was, because I mean, it's hard because some of these things have probably disappeared a little bit, the traditional activities. So it's kind of hard to point to, oh, this is still very African, or this is still, you would have to look for it a bit, quite a bit, I think.
It sounds like you did see some in the agriculture, for example. You said you saw some agricultural practices that might be legacy.
Yes.
We would have to do a part 2 where we go looking for the specific potential.
But that's a very good point you bring up, because I was struggling with this a bit, because of course it's part of the people's history and background, and it is there, but it's hard to show this in a concrete way in the film. So it's maybe, I mean, this would be maybe another movie. Maybe there's certainly somebody from there could do that movie and would do a good job. I'm sure better than I could.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And as we close out, I just want to say again, congratulations on having made a great film. And thank you for making the time to have a great conversation with us about the film.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The film is screening all day today, so be sure to check it out. And thank you to everyone in our audience for joining us for this Q&A with Nick Brandestini. Don't forget that you can still catch this film and all of the other films that are screening today at ttfilmfestival.com. Just look for that calendar, click the calendar, and you'll find all the information that you need there. And if you're hungry for more movies after the festival, be sure to visit storyplay.tv. I'm Kathy Kareem, and thank you again, Nick.
Thank you, Kathy. Bye-bye. Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.